After many years of asking and wishing and hoping and wondering, we finally have a shoe that we've been looking forward to since probably 2017. What's up everybody, I'm Seth Fowler and today I'm reviewing the recently released Ultra 4D. I can't believe that they actually released this sneaker. We've been asking for it for so long, I just never thought that it was going to happen. And now it's here, and I'm holding it. That's alright. In 2015, when the Ultra Boost was first released, it quickly became one of the most popular silhouettes for Adidas and one of the most popular silhouettes available. Now there were a lot of reasons for that, one being that Kanye wore the shoe in a concert and Kanye was kind of at the peak of his popularity, which means that that shoe instantly sold out. But not only that, the Ultra Boost also featured a new kind of cushioning technology called Boost, which people had never experienced anything like it before. So the Ultra Boost really was this insane combination of both hype and just incredible comfort, and it made it one of the most popular sneakers I think we've seen in the last couple years. In fact, even most GR colorways of the Ultra Boost were sold out through 2017. It was actually really difficult to grab a pair. But then, as it usually does, the hype finally died down and Ultra Boost became widely available. And although I don't know the specific sales figures of the Ultra Boost, I'm sure that there has been somewhat of a drop-off since 2018 and 2019. And it makes sense because Boost became more readily available, and because there was more Boost, there was more opportunity to make more Ultra Boosts and more NMDs and more Boost type sneakers. And as more shoes and supply became available, the supply started to outweigh the demand, and because of that, pairs started going on sale. And I mean, that's always what happens with new technologies in footwear. They're always really hyped up in the beginning, and then slowly, as it becomes much more readily available and more shoes have it, people just don't care as much. I mean, we've seen it a million times before, most notably with Air and Nike sneakers. It's just kind of the life of a new footwear technology. And at the height of Boost popularity, and even a little bit after, I think it put Adidas in this incredible position where they could release pretty much anything and it would be hyped. And because of that, it almost seemed like Adidas became a little bit complacent, like they thought that no matter what they did, it would sell out. And as Boost became easier and easier to get, people were less likely to buy sneakers just because they had Boost in them. And again, that's just the standard life cycle of a new footwear technology. That's just what's going to happen. But where I think Adidas kind of made a misstep is that they didn't really focus on what made their shoes special anymore. They thought that Boost would be the driving force behind their sales. And that's why I think they went directly to Futurecraft rather than really working on their overall design of their uppers. And like I mentioned, the Futurecraft 4D was one of the first sneakers that they released that featured 4D technology, which is essentially just a 3D printed midsole. And as you would expect from a company at the height of their popularity, any new technology they released would immediately sell out. The problem is that while there was a lot of potential in 4D, and while it looked really cool, it wasn't anywhere close to as comfortable or as wearable as something like Boost. So while the technology was really cool and hyped up at the beginning, it really lost a lot of its thunder later on down the road. So I said all that to say this. I think if they released a shoe like this, a hybrid between their new technology and one of their classic, very popular silhouettes, at the time that both this silhouette was very popular and this technology was still brand new, this shoe could have had the potential to revitalize a lot of the hype behind the brand. Obviously, hype doesn't always drive overall sales, but it does keep a brand in the news, and that's something that's very important for brands trying to release products almost every day. I could be totally off base on all of that, but that's just what it seems like to a consumer who has some insight into the footwear industry, and it just seems like this was such a missed opportunity. Not that they didn't eventually take that opportunity, but the fact that the timing was just so weird for this release. If the Ultra 4D had released back in 2018 or even in early 2019, it would have been a really great limited flagship sneaker that really showed off what Futurecraft could be on a really great looking silhouette. And while I've heard the argument that there just wasn't enough manufacturing capability for 4D at that time, it's kind of harder to believe because they were still releasing 4D sneakers throughout last year and the year before. They just weren't hyped up silhouettes. I have a really hard time believing that the Run 1.0 4D or whatever it's called is moving the needle more than the Ultra 4D could have back in 2018. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it seems like the reason the shoe didn't release back then wasn't because they couldn't do it, it's because they didn't want to do it. They didn't feel like it was necessary, and now they're releasing it to try and revitalize the Ultra Boost and 4D hype, and I just think it's too little too late. I don't know, I guess I didn't have to go on that whole rant, but it just bugged me because Adidas was doing so well, and not that they're not doing well, they're still like the second largest footwear brand in the world. The thing was though, they just had this great opportunity and they just kind of bungled it. Or maybe they didn't. I don't know the sales figures, but I do notice when shoes are in stock at sneaker stores and when they're not in stock. And when GR sneakers are constantly out of stock, that usually means that a brand is doing well, but when they're constantly in stock and going on sale, that usually means that there's more supply than there is demand. I just think it could have been a much more effective marketing tool if they had released it sooner rather than 2 years after everyone cared. But getting into the actual review itself, the Adidas Ultra 4D released on August 13th for a retail price of $220. And yes, this shoe did still sell out, which means there were a lot of people still excited about this shoe. But the difference between this shoe selling out now and selling out in 2018 were that people were buying this shoe just because they liked this shoe in particular, whereas in 2018, this shoe would have sold out immediately and people would have been trying to pick up anything with 4D just because it was similar to this shoe. The same thing that happened with all the Ultra Boosts and all the NMDs and all the shoes that had Boost around the time that Boost was popular. But let's move on and jump right into the Ultra 4D and find out what actually makes up this sneaker. Starting off from the toe of the sneaker, you'll notice that the entire upper of the shoe comes with a very recognizable color scheme. And the color scheme or colorway is that of the OG Ultra Boost, which is one of the most popular Ultra Boost colorways of all time. From the tip of the toe to the midfoot of the sneaker, you've got that classic Ultra Boost 1.0 prime knit pattern. It comes in that classic black and dark gray look with the arrow pointing towards the toe of the sneaker. From what I can tell, the actual feel of the prime knit itself has remained unchanged from the original Ultra Boost 1.0, and in my opinion that's a good thing because it feels great. As you move back on the sneaker towards the midfoot, you've got your classic Ultra Boost midfoot cage in black with reflective 3 stripes. Weaving through the midfoot cage, you've got these black flat laces, and then as you continue up on this one-piece booty construction towards the top of the tongue area of the shoe, you've got this black mesh with the Adidas logo also in reflective materials. I always say this when I review pairs of Ultra Boost 1.0s, and obviously this is an Ultra Boost 1.0 on a 4D midsole, so it's essentially the same thing. But although I love the way that the Ultra Boost 1.0 looks with the mesh and the prime knit combination, the mesh just isn't as stretchy as the prime knit. And because of that, it's just a little bit harder to get your foot into the shoe versus something like an Ultra Boost 2.0 where the entire upper is prime knit. Again though, I do love the look, so the trade-off is totally fine. Moving inside the sneaker, you've got this black, really soft sock liner, and then the insole of the sneaker also comes in black with the Ultra 4D text printed on the heel in white. It's a little weird, but one of the things that I love about 4D sneakers, and something that I've done on my Futurecraft 4Ds, is actually take out the insole. Because when you take out the insole, there's only a thin mesh barrier between your foot and the 4D, which means that air can actually come up through the 4D and ventilate the bottom of your foot, which sounds like it wouldn't be that great, but genuinely, it's awesome. The only reason that people wouldn't do it is because this is really the only cushion you have between your foot and the 4D, and 4D, as we'll talk about a little bit later, isn't as soft as I would like it to be. But for me personally, I prefer the way that the ventilation feels over the extra little bit of cushion that you get from the insole. Plus, Ultra Boosts and shoes like Ultra Boosts, like Yeezys for example, can fit a little bit small, and when you remove the insole, they just seem to fit just that much better. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, the mesh that they use inside the Ultra 4D under the insole is not as soft or as pleasant as the Futurecraft 4D, so maybe I'll just put the insole back in. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. We'll see. As for sizing and fit, the Ultra 4D does seem to fit just like every other pair of Ultra Boost 1.0s. So if you've ever owned a pair of those before, go with that same size in this shoe. I like to go true to size personally, but that's probably because I have a more narrow foot, and I've heard from people with wider feet or just other people in general that this shoe can be a little bit tight on them, so they end up going a half size up. If you're worried about fit because you have a wider foot or you just don't like shoes to be that snug, I would probably suggest going up half a size, but if you have the chance to try this shoe on first or a shoe like this on first, make sure to do that to make sure you're grabbing the right size for you. Then moving back on the shoe, you get to your classic OG Ultra Boost purple heel counter. And like the original Ultra Boost, the logo placement is still the same. However, rather than saying Ultra Boost, it says Ultra 4D. Then moving down on the shoe, you get to probably the most interesting and special part of the sneaker, the 4D midsole. And as you can tell, this 4D midsole comes in black, which I actually think makes this entire silhouette look really cool and really sleek. As much as I like the more classic look of the Futurecraft 4D's green midsole, I definitely think I prefer the black because it just blends in so much nicer and it gives it a much more stealth feel. But not only is the color different from the Futurecraft 4D to the Ultra 4D, but also the pattern that makes up the midsole is ever so slightly different as well. I mean, it makes sense because the Futurecraft 4D came out in 2018 and the Ultra 4D came out in 2020, so they've had time to tweak the pattern and the sculpting of this midsole to make it better, which makes a lot of sense. But to be fair and somewhat annoyingly, they haven't tweaked it that much, and because of that, it still feels pretty similar. I will say that the 4D midsole on the Ultra 4D is noticeably softer than the Futurecraft 4D, but not by much. And because of that, the overall comfort of the two shoes is relatively similar. I mean, even just looking at them, they look very, very similar. This was obviously based on the Ultra Boost, and it still has a prime knit upper. I mean, this is another reason why I'm scratching my head why they didn't release this shoe sooner. I mean, this shoe released in very limited quantities because 4D was relatively difficult to make, but I mean, just a couple months later, they were releasing a lot more 4D silhouettes, and I just don't understand why this wasn't one of them. But regardless, it's still relatively comfortable for a 3D printed plastic underneath your foot. but it's not incredible and it's nowhere near as soft as something like Boost. I would not buy this shoe because you think it's going to be a super comfortable sneaker. I would buy it because it looks cool, and that's pretty much it. Don't get me wrong, the 4D technology is really cool. I love 3D printing. I did it a bunch in my actual professional career back in New York, but it's something that I'm glad that they're working on to improve it. It just isn't there yet. But then finally, moving to the bottom of the sneaker, you've got this black rubber outsole. As you can tell, the traction pattern has changed from the Futurecraft 4Ds, which had very little traction, to the Ultra 4Ds, which seem to have much more ample traction. I'm definitely happy that they made this change because I feel like this shoe will be much more wearable in slippery conditions. Overall, I feel like the Ultra 4D is an awesome sneaker, but in my opinion, it's too little too late. Yes, the sneaker looks great. Yes, the technology is cool. Yes, they took one of my favorite sneakers of all time and put it on top of another midsole. I think that's awesome. But the 4D technology isn't to a point yet where I'd wear it every day because it just isn't comfortable enough. And they just had such a great opportunity with this sneaker, and I just feel like they bungled it. That being said, if you would like to grab a pair of the Adidas Ultra 4Ds, I've left an affiliate link to GOAT in the top of the description so you can grab a pair for yourself. And right now, resale prices aren't that bad. But if the shoe had released in 2018, resale prices probably would have been in the thousands, but you know, it is what it is. But now I would love to know your thoughts on the Adidas Ultra 4D and whether you got a pair for yourself, whether you'd like a pair for yourself, or whether you just don't care. So let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all in the next one.